You will not believe it, but this church is a very important church, Reformed Church of East Africa. Well, by the time I'm through explaining this church, you will be shocked. In 1991, when I was working with the police in Eldoret, we came to this church. And this church, we came once, only once, whereby the South African president then, called Fredrick de Clerk, came and worshipped here. He came to Eldoret in 1991 and he came and worshipped here. It is hard to enter this place because it is locked and nobody is around. And I don't stay in Eldoret. So this church, it is associated with Fredrick de Clerk. In the 50s, Fredrick de Clerk was staying in Eldoret. Actually, he was born in Eldoret, so we can say his whole life, Fredrick de Clerk was born in Eldoret. He stayed here until when Kenya attained independence in 1963. In 1963, you will hear there are some Dutch who moved out of Eldoret and went to South Africa. So, Fredrick de Clerk was among those Dutch who left Eldoret and went to stay in South Africa. When he stayed in South Africa, stayed there until he became the president. De Clerk is also known as somebody, as the last white South African president. He is the one who handed over to Nelson Mandela, and then when he handed over to Nelson Mandela, he became Nelson Mandela's deputy president. Now, when Kenya attained independence in the 50s, Fredrick de Clerk's grandfather was the pastor in this church, was the pastor in this Reformed church, and you will understand that Reformed churches are associated with the Dutch or Boer. So his grandfather was a pastor here. I remember him talking of this place. He was remembering that he grew up here, and he was wondering in 1961 how this place has really developed. Because when he was here in 1961, 30 years later, the place had really developed. Now this picture is being taken in 15th November 2023. 15 November 2023 is when this one is being taken. And you can see that is 30 years after de Clerk came to pray in this church. And 30 years ago, he was saying that this place is very much developed because he had left this place 30 years earlier. And you can see the way the church is. If today it looks like this, and in 1990 he was saying that, 1991 he was saying it was very developed, then that is a wonder. His grandfather, whose name I've forgotten because since 1991, and today is 2022, that is 31 years I've never stepped here. But he told us that his grandfather was the pastor of this church between 1960 and 61. So this is where the church that Fredrick de Clerk, the South African president, who handed over powers to Nelson Mandela, grew up, and his grandfather, as I'm repeating again and again, was the pastor here. He was shocked that the place was so developed in 1991, and this is 31 years later. He was saying that he had left this place for 31 years, and he was wondering how it has developed in that one. Now add another 31 years, that is 62 years, you'll find that this is what is now being called that it is really developed. There is nobody in the church. I would have been given chance to go and record it from inside. And how do you get here? When you get here, you go between Eldoret CBD and Huruma or Ripe Plywood. You ask to be dropped at a place called St. Paul's Bakery. Then from St. Paul's Bakery, you can take a motorbike up to this place. It is a walking distance, but if you are new around to get a motorbike, only 50 shillings. I would even request you to come on a Sunday so that you can get in and worship with them. Redeemed Church of East Africa. It used to be called the Dutch Redeemed Church, but now it is Redeemed Church of East Africa that President Fredrick de Clerk grew up in. Thank you.